Welcome to the Paperless Productivity Podcast, where we give you the tips, tricks, and know-how to solve your biggest workflow challenges and bring greater productivity into your workplace every day.
My name is Therese Murphy. I'm the manager of Yakima County District Court. I've been managing the court since about 2011. My background actually is as a lawyer. So I've been a practicing attorney since 2001. Primarily in the area of criminal law, working as a prosecuting attorney in various counties in the state of Washington. I left that line of work and came to work for the district court judges here in Yakima in 2011. I also happen to be a judge in a small city in the Lower Valley in Yakima County as well. So I'm here to kind of tell you a little bit about Yakima County's experience with the on-base solution as well as the TrueFiling solution, both of which have been deployed in our county, or in our court, I should say, since mid-2016. Just a little bit about Yakima County. We are the second largest county by land mass in the state of Washington. There are 39 total in our state. We have a population of just under 250,000 people. The largest city is Yakima, and that is where I am sitting today in Yakima, the city of Yakima. As far as employment is concerned, primarily agricultural, health services, and local government. One of our claim to fame here in Yakima, and in particular the area I live in, which is Moxie, right outside of Yakima, is that we produce 75% of the hops made in the United States for beer, and nearly almost the entire world. And so we are very rich in alcohol production here in Yakima County. A lot of great wineries and craft beer operations working in our community. Yakima County District Court is actually a court of limited jurisdiction. And we not only accept cases filed by the county itself, but we also contract with several municipalities in our county to provide court services, namely Unigap, Mabton, Grandview, are the ones that we're contracting with right now. My responsibility as part of Yakima District Court is not just the clerk's office, but also the Adult Probation Services Department and pretrial services. We have 5 judicial officers, 4 elected judges, and 1 commissioner, 43 staff among all of our departments. And we have 2 locations, one in Yakima and one in Grandview. The Court of Limited Jurisdiction in our state is just that. We are limited in the things that we can hear, primarily infractions, minor criminal offenses, which are defined as anything that has a jail sentence of 364 days or less. Civil suits seeking damages in a value less than $100,000, small claims less than $5,000, name changes, and anti-harassment stalking protection orders are the types of things that our judges preside over. All right, so as I indicated, we have 2 locations in our county, and they are 41 miles apart. So that is the picture. There is one of my judicial officers, Judge Sanderson. That isn't his real car. He wishes it was his real car, but it's not. And he does really drive that way such that a stop sign would be crashed to the ground. He would deny it, but I don't agree. Nonetheless, I am in Yakima, which is the picture of the courthouse, the main courthouse at the top of the slide. And then we have a smaller operation down in Grandview, 41 miles away. So I want to talk a little bit about the court system in Washington, because I know every state differs in the way that it's structured. But I want to talk about it in the context of the number of cases that are heard, which will become relevant as we proceed further along in this presentation. We have the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. Those are our reviewing courts in our state. The courts of limited jurisdiction and the superior courts, those are trial courts. So those are the courts that decide the disputes. The Court of Appeals and Supreme Court review the decisions of those lower courts. And actually, in some respects, Superior Court is also, and oftentimes is, a court of review of courts of limited jurisdiction cases as well. So in a minor aspect of their role, they do serve also as an appellate court. So in our state, in 2016, I believe is where I pulled this data from, the Supreme Court heard roughly 1,400 cases that entire year. The Court of Appeals heard 3,700 or so that year. The Superior Court heard about 250,000 cases that year. Courts of limited jurisdiction heard over 2 million cases. Clearly, and I'm certain in many of your other jurisdictions, you all have the workhorses of your court system, and courts of limited jurisdiction in Washington is definitely the workhorse of the court system. Most people are going to interact with a district or a municipal court far more frequently, far more often than in any other aspect of our court system, which is why it was so important for us to really focus in on coming up with some advanced technology that will help us manage our business effectively. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about our environment here in Yakima County. These are pictures of an old jail that is attached to our courthouse. And when I say old, I mean really old. The jail cells you can kind of see off to the left on the picture on the left. This is an old lever system. So you pull the lever and all the cell doors would open. So it's really dilapidated, not well kept up. But it is where we stored everything, all of our files. And so what you'll see all those bins on the one side and the cells on the other. Those were jam-packed full of files. We had over 100,000 civil files stored in our old jail. And then we had the wall of DUI, which was the picture on the right. So I need you to use a little imagination here. I didn't take before and after pictures. I wish I would have. But that was literally a wall of orange, and it had thousands upon thousands of criminal DUI files. On the other side of that are more cells full of more criminal files. So we had an easily 30 to 40,000 files in that jail. And we were asked by our county commissioners to move out, to vacate the premises. So we had to come up with a solution. And I will talk to you about that solution momentarily. This is our new environment. This is our on-base solution, a screenshot of our on-base solution. This has been our saving grace. This combined with TrueFiling has really helped us manage all that work that we once in the past stored in the old jail. All right, so the goals with on-base was to obviously identify efficiency, develop some cost savings, make my employees happy, which is really important to me, and customer service. All right, so let's talk about the Yakima County District Court, our filings. In 2017, the majority of our filings came from infractions. There were over 16,000 that came into our court in 17. That represents just over 57% of our caseload. In 17, we got about 7,300 civil filings. It represents about 25% of our caseload, and our criminal filings were just under 5,000, representing 16% of our caseload. With all of that comes an inordinate amount of paper, and we had to figure out how to manage that paper, hence on-base and TrueFiling. So let's talk about what that paper looks like. So I shared with you that infractions represent about 57% of all of our filings, 16% in criminal, and 25% in civil. Well, of the 57%, you'd think we would have an inordinate amount of paper. We don't. About 162,000 pieces of paper come in on those 57% filings and infractions. Really, it amounts to maybe 2 or 3 documents with every case that is filed. Not really heavily paper laden. Goes up quite a bit when we're talking about criminal. On just under 500,000 is what we estimate for all of those cases that were filed that year. And in civil, this is our paper monster. 750,000 pieces of paper coming in any given year. In civil, it is probably the most incredible thing to see. People wheeling carts and suitcases in here full of paper. And that's what we were dealing with on a daily basis, multiple times a day. We had to figure out how to manage that. All right. So we did that by obviously purchasing and implementing on-base and TrueFiling. And so going back to that chart that I had showed you about the goals that we had, one of them was efficiency. And I've identified a couple of processes that I think really demonstrate the efficiencies that we've been able to gain with on-base and the TrueFiling integration. So e-ticket infraction processing. In our jurisdiction, officers have the ability to generate electronic tickets, and the program they use is Sector. Sector was I don't know who developed Sector, but it was implemented and it's managed by the State Administrative Office of the Court. And so they generate these e-tickets. So they come into us in an electronic format, and we get them through essentially a portal into the state system. So we have to log into the state system. The old way was to log in there. We'd have to open each individual ticket and save each document. Now there will be at least 2, if not 3, if not 4 documents. So we'd have to save each document to a temporary folder on our network. Once we would do that, then another employee would access that folder and import those documents into WebEx, which is an old archaic document retention system that we had in our court. And then once we would get that imported, then we would have to go and open up each document again, index the case number, doc type, law enforcement agency, and case type. Once that was done, we would have to go through a validation process. Another person would have to open up each document and re-enter the case number. It took us minimally 14 hours a week just to process those tickets. And obviously that would vary depending upon the volume that came in, but we estimate about 14 hours a week. Our new system with OnBase. All we have to do, we do the same thing. We go into the state system, we batch consolidate those documents, those tickets into one document. So there's no individual saving of anything. We save that one document to that network folder. What OnBase does is it constantly pings that network folder to determine if there's a new document in there. If there is, it grabs it, pulls it into OnBase, splits it up, and then my clerk goes to her queue, selects all, and says, process complete, done. That's done in an hour. We can do an entire week's worth of work in an hour in this new system. That's a 93% time savings, and we are estimating we save just under $13,000 a year, just in this one process. And I saw on the ledger, a lot of you are courts. You know, as I do very well, that is one very small process of hundreds, if not thousands of processes that we actually do every single day. Think about just expanding this to everything you do, how that might impact your day-to-day operation, how much time and money you could save. All right, let's talk about true filing. All right, this is the civil world. So this is the old civil world. We would get, let's say we get a new case that's coming in. We have to date stamp, physically, literally date stamp every document and assign and write a case number on each document physically. Then we would have to separate each document based upon what needs to happen with it. So if it's a document that needs to be signed by a judge, it goes into one bin. If it is a document that doesn't need to be signed by a judge and just needs clerk interaction, it goes into another bin. So then, just to kind of expound on that a little bit, my judges would walk past my office every day, multiple times a day, go collect the bin, carry those documents back to their office, sit in their office, review the documents, sign everything, put it back in the bin, get up, walk the bin back to the shelf. The clerk would then have to grab the bin and then conform all the copies of that document before we could move on. So the conforming process is writing the date on the signature line of each document, stamping the judge's name on each of the copies of the original document the judge just signed, and then collecting all those documents, putting them in an envelope, and mailing them. I can't even begin. If you recall, there are almost 750,000 pieces of paper that come through civil every year. This is an inordinate amount of work, inordinate. All right. If it is a document that didn't need a judge's interaction, it's a little bit more of a stunted process in that really the clerk just prepares it for mailing. So she just stamps it in, prepares it for mailing, sends the conformed copies back, and then we have to actually file all that stuff in the file, and that's a whole nother animal altogether, the filing process. Then once that's all done, then we have to separate each one of those documents. What we did was we put them in their specially defined bins. So default judgment's going to bin, judgments on answers going to bin, dismissal's going to bin, satisfaction's going to bin. And what that did is it enabled us to do a batch entry process for mass docketing and JIS. So in our court, OnBase works with the state AOC system that we have to use, and it is called Discus. And it's an old 30-year-old archaic green screen system that is not user-friendly. So despite the fact that we're dealing with this really old system, our vendor ImageSoft was able to make these two work together to a degree that we can actually effectively use OnBase and TrueFiling to manage our day-to-day operations. So that is the old way we did it. This is the new way that we do it. So with OnBase and TrueFiling, it has dramatically changed our world in civil. We only use TrueFiling in civil. We don't use it in criminal. But now what happens is the filers, which are primarily collection agencies, they submit, they're suing for whatever. They submit their filings through the TrueFiling portal. And in that process, each page of the document is automatically date stamped. The system does it. We don't do that. The case number is automatically assigned. The system does it. We don't do that. And it's smart enough to know that even if there's multiple filers coming in at the same time, submitting multiple things, it won't assign the same case number more than once. So it's set up so that does not happen. Once it comes through the TrueFiling portal and lands into the review queue and OnBase, my clerk just quickly opens it up and looks to make sure that the document that they submitted is really the document that they submitted. So when a filer submits a document, we decide what the options are that they can call it. So if it's a subpoena, for example, they should have selected subpoena. And that's really important because there's money attached to a lot of those filings. So we want to make sure that they're not trying to, game the system and not pay their filing fee that they're supposed to pay. We spend a lot of time working with our filers, educating them on what those doc types are, so that way they know. And now they're in really good shape. We rarely have any issues with regard to documents coming in that are not titled properly. But nonetheless, our clerk will go through and they'll review each document to confirm that it is, one, the correct county, because oftentimes we get cases that shouldn't be here. That the case number is there and that the index matches the uploaded filed document. So we know that the titles are the same. And all she does is she clicks the accept button and the documents are routed to the appropriate workflow. The filing party receives an email of acceptance and a downloaded conforming copy. So that whole process that we had before, where we had to essentially conform the copies of the original the judge signed, we don't do any of that anymore. It's gone, completely gone. And this happens instantaneously. It goes back through TrueFiling. So this is an instantaneous, seamless process for the filer. And then the other really great thing that I think I can't emphasize enough, that a lot of these things that come through, it's not just new suits, it can be documents on suits that already exist that require judges' interaction. And so the workflow process in OnBase is super robust. We decide, based upon what we know the typical route for that document is, what that workflow looks like. So the judges have their own queues, their civil review queues, and it's weighted, so it's fair, which can be a little bit of an issue. So every judge has the same amount of work to work in their civil queues. Instead of having to get up and walk from their office and pick up a bin and go back to their office, sign, and then drop the bin back off, they don't do that anymore. They sit in the comfort of their office, they open up their queue, they launch TrueSign, and they electronically affix their signatures to those documents. They complete it, the document through workflow goes back into the next queue that it needs to go to for the clerk then to manage that piece of paper, that document. The beauty of that is not only can the judges up here do this, but the judge in Grandview can do this. So it's allowed us a lot of flexibility for work to get done by other people that otherwise could not be done. Another example is my clerks in Grandview now are trained in how to manage a civil queue, because there's no reason why a clerk in Grandview cannot now go through the judgment queue, for example, and start processing those documents. So the ability to be able to work at different locations and kind of separate out the workload has also been an added bonus in these systems. And then the last step we do, and we will always have to do it as long as we have Discus, we will utilize that batch entry process for mass docketing in JIS, which hopefully someday will change. All right, so let's talk about the paper filing, the cost savings that we've realized. In the old process, if we wanted to put a new suit in, it takes about 10 minutes to enter a new suit. We had 6,500 cases. It saved us about 70% of time and about $15,000 in a year, going from the old system to the new system. Same with the ex parte orders, takes about 10 minutes. We have saved, again, 70% of our time and about $16,000 a year just by having on-base and true filing. Incredible what we've been able to do in our civil department. All right, employee satisfaction is obviously a really important piece for me and probably for all of you too. Happy employees mean productive employees, mean pleasant employees, mean a lot less problems. And so my employees are no different. And I can tell you some of the things that they have to say are pretty amazing. So for example, Julie up here, she says, I like not having to carry around 30 plus files. It's gotten to the point, we still do have some paper files. It's gotten to the point now where my judges and my clerks dread to see the paper file. They want to be an on-base. They don't want to mess with paper. Civil does not want to mess with paper. They want people submitting things through true filing. And true filing really has been embraced and accepted by all our filers at this point. We have not had to go the route of mandating. We don't mandate. We could, but we haven't had to. We've chosen taking the diplomatic route and have gotten everybody, for the most part, on board to use true filing. The one that's really kind of impressive is Tamara down here, the pretty blonde lady. The file and all documents are right there at your fingertips. True filing is amazing. Having the conformed copies go back to the filers through true filing is such a time saver. Having on-base file stamp and date stamp the documents automatically is wonderful and another huge time saver. We have filers call in from time to time to check the status of a document. Even if it hasn't been signed, we're able to view the workflow to see where the document is rather than having to rifle through hundreds of documents to find its location and status. And that happened often in our old system. Talk about a waste of time. We don't really do that anymore. All right, employee satisfaction. You're gonna have to use a little bit of imagination here because again, I really regret not taking before and after pictures. So the picture on the left, actually imagine a shelving unit that we removed in February of 2017. It was 156 feet long, 28 inches deep, files on both sides. So it occupied that entire space, done. We took that down. And actually, since that time, we've taken down another shelving unit, the one that's furthest in the back, it's gone. So I have one shelving unit now in my main office and hope that will be gone very soon. The end result of that has been, I've been able to expand the workspace for my employees. So they now have much larger cubicles with walls and more space for them to actually just breathe and be able to do their work. And that's something that they absolutely love, to have just a more comfortable environment to do their job. All right, let's talk about cost savings. So we went live in June of 2016. And so in June of 2016, halfway through the year, we had about 2.5 people dedicated just to manage our paper. So I had 1.5 office tech positions and a full-time office specialist. And that doesn't take into consideration the countless volunteers that I were constantly recruiting to come in and manage civil, their paper. That in and of itself was a beast, and it was never current. And so then with that and the files, forms, and printing that I was doing, and the copier costs, I was spending about $153,000. Since we implemented true filing and on-base in 2017, I've managed to trim down the cost by about $40,000. And that even includes adding the additional cost for maintenance for both true filing and on-base. And I fully expect in 2018 to trim it down even further. At least that 1/4 office tech position won't be there anymore. It'll be gone, and my forms and printing will go down. So just in the first year, we have managed to trim it down by about $40,000, and I fully expect to be able to do that even more in 2018. customer service obviously is really important to us, and access to justice is a common point of discussion in Washington State, and very much an important aspect to all courts in our state. And there's one piece of this statement that I think is crucial, and it talks about technology. Introduction of technology or changes in the use of technology must not reduce access or participation, and whenever possible shall advance such access and participation. That statement is constantly on my mind. And given unlimited funds, I would have so much more done in my court. And I continue to push to make that happen. And I know that the court administrator for Yakima County is on this presentation, Robin Burke. And if she could speak, she would attest to the fact that I am constantly pushing for more funds and to implement more technology to really fulfill the mission or the goal of this particular statement. We want to improve access and participation wherever possible for anyone who wants who is coming to the courts, whether you're a litigant or you're an observer, whatever the case may be. So let's talk about a few of the things that I've been working on. So currently, in our current solution, we've implemented a number of things that have furthered access to justice. I have built a couple of portals or kiosks in Yakima and in Grandview for the public to come and search for cases themselves. And I routinely see them used in both locations. So that's something that we've been able to do. TrueFiling has enabled greater access in that our filers are able to not only submit things more timely and get things back, but it serves as a historical record and ability for them to go back and pull documents whenever they wish. Anything that they submitted through TrueFiling, they can have access to again through TrueFiling. We have done Box.com integration, and I'll talk a little bit about Box.com, but I just want you to know that I'm kind of deviating from Box.com and looking at ShareBase, which is another Highland product that I've been working with my vendor on, ImageSoft, to try and integrate into OnBase. In fact, not only it is a product that seamlessly integrates into OnBase. It's similar to Box.com, but ShareBase has, I think, a little bit more benefit to us in that there's some workflow that and automation that come with it that I don't have with Box.com. But really, Box is really just a document sharing system, and it's cloud-based, and we use it now primarily for the criminal side of the house. So we have a lot of lawyers that want to submit documents to us electronically, and so they do it through Box.com. We're able to download that and then download it into OnBase. So that way, there's no paper coming in necessarily. It's all coming in an electronic format, which eliminates a few steps for my clerk. But again, I can eliminate even more steps with the integration of ShareBase, which is my goal to have that done this summer. We have allowed licensing and system access to external users, and so OnBase really does have an ability to lock things down and make security really granular. And so we have, they pay for it obviously, but they can access and search for documents at their leisure from their office if they wish. File accessibility, again, that's kind of goes along the lines of the public and the TrueFiling filers and then the lawyers being able to have access to things very quickly. And then rapid response. And that's primarily the area of TrueFiling. You file a document, and once it's processed through the clerk accepts it, it's back to you in a matter of minutes. You have it, and it's available. Future projects to promote access to justice. I want a better, robust public portal. I want people to be at home in their pajamas, ordering documents and paying for them online and then getting them online. I don't want them to have to come to the court to get them. I don't want to have to email them out. I don't want to have to do any of that. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to make that happen very soon. We have some law and justice partners in our jurisdiction that have implemented their own case management systems, namely Justware, and that's the prosecutor's office and Office of Assigned Counsel. They are desirous of having some sort of communication link between OnBase and those two and Justware, and so I know that's on the radar for something for us to do. And then I want when we launched our solution, we launched it July 26, 2016. All of our old civil cases were not brought into OnBase. We started with any new case moving forward. A decision that probably would change in retrospect now. But having said that, it's my goal to bring in all old civil cases that are alive and can be filed against into OnBase. So that way, the filers can true file against it, which will send civil into a completely different orbit. I mean, just completely transform their operation, 100% for the better. All right, just to recap the goals that we had when we started down this odyssey of trying to bring in OnBase and true filing. I believe, and while I'm certain that there's more that can be done in every one of these areas, I believe that we've really touched on and made an impact on all the goals we thought to touch on and make an impact on in the implementation of this solution. We've definitely become more efficient. We've saved money. We've made our employees happy, and we are able to provide better customer service.
Did get just a couple questions that did come in. I think you should be able to easily answer these three. Okay. You mentioned earlier that sometimes filers will submit things that are not for the correct county. Can you tell us, how you handle that a little bit from your system and how that process works if you need to send it to a different county?
We actually don't send it to a different county. We reject the filing, and OnBase allows us to bring a note up, and the clerk will just type in a note saying, "Oh, wrong county. You need to send this to, Kittitas County." And then it goes back through true filing with that rejection note, so the filer knows, "Oh, I made a mistake," and then they handle it from there.
Oh, wow. So it's electronically delivered, then you're not printing on paper and mailing something out.
Oh, yeah, no. Cool. No, we don't do paper.
Awesome. Another question that's here was, because you talked a lot about true filing and OnBase. So, the question was, did you purchase true filing and OnBase at the same time?
Did I purchase it?
Yeah. Did you obtain true filing and OnBase at the same time? Okay.
Yeah, I purchased it and we launched it all at once. So when we went there, you can either do the big bang or you can do incrementally. And for us, we went big bang. We launched true filing and OnBase all at the same time.
Awesome. Excellent. And then one last question is that how was it? I mean, we saw some of the quotes, obviously, that you had in terms of the users. How was it in terms of helping them to adjust or to adopt the new system?
It was a challenge. There's no question. Employees are not excited about change. Well, I'm not excited about change. But I can tell you there's lots of things that you can do to try and manage that change so it isn't so negative. So some of the things that we did, I identified some subject matter experts in my court, people that I thought could be expert in their respective areas. So as an example, I had a civil subject matter expert, an infraction subject matter expert, a criminal one, a data dissemination one. And those people I got together and they worked with me and my supervisors to really build a cohesive unit and involve them in the development of the solution, and more importantly, in the testing of the solution, and even more importantly, in the training of the other staff on the solution. And so if you're able to do that, bring select employees into the fold, set the stage, help them understand that change is not easy, that there's going to be a lot of griping, there's going to be a lot of frustration, but it's your job to be the cheerleader for this change, to listen and be empathetic and understanding of the concerns and fears, but at the same time, reassuring people that it's going to be okay. If you give them that power and the level of knowledge and control to a certain extent to have some input and say in what you're doing, you're now way ahead of the curve in terms of managing that future change. Those employees were responsible for training the staff. So I had a laboratory that I set up before we went live, and it was in a separate part of the court. It wasn't in the work area. It had to be separate and apart, and employees were assigned times to go down and work in the laboratory. And I built workstations that mirrored or mimicked the workstation the employee would actually be sitting in when they were working in OnBase. So a clerk's workstation, for example, in the court had everyone had 2 monitors, but they had a signature pad, they had everything they needed, and then I had a judge's station right next to it. So that way that can be worked through. So I set it up that way. I did that. The other thing I did was I did mock court sessions, and I involved the prosecutor and the public defender, and I made my employees volunteer as defendants. And we actually went, and we had a judge and a clerk, and we actually did full-on court sessions. So that way people can understand the timing, and everybody, kind of the mystery of what this was going to look like changed. You kind of take that out of the equation, and it becomes less scary. And so I involved all my employees in all those mock court sessions because I thought it was that important. And then we did a lot of training on the weekends. My supervisors and I would come in and we would sit with employees. And if they felt before we went live they needed more time, you get more time. I'll give up my evenings, my weekends, whatever you need to come in here and help you be more comfortable with what's about to happen. And then when we pulled the trigger, there were growing pains. There were bugs. There were things we didn't expect. But that's normal, and that's to be expected. So we just worked through every single one of those bugs. That's what we did, one day at a time.
Cool. Great answer. Thanks, Therese. We did get another question that came in. This apparently, I guess one of the courts on our call is they're already using OnBase as well. And the question is that, are you using queues throughout your court, for example, from intake to research attorneys to judges?
Yes.
Can you tell us maybe a little bit more? I mean, what are all the people that are involved right now that you can think of maybe that are involved with the workflow process?
Okay, so we have several life cycles in our solution, and I'm going to bring it up so I can look at it. We don't have research attorneys. I'm the research attorney, quite honestly. That's what happens. That's my role when something happens. But we have several life cycles, and our life cycles are built are kind of divvied up by the different areas of the court. So, for example, I have a civil life cycle, and within that life cycle, I have probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 17 queues in that life cycle. And so, for example, like there'll be an anti-harassment new queue. So if there's a new case that comes in for anti-harassment, it lands there. Or a ready to enter queue, that's when the new suits are coming in. So we have that there. And then there's a bunch of true filing queues because we have some payment, with the way ours is set up, you have a pay later option or ready for receiving, that kind of thing. So my civil clerks primarily are involved in that life cycle. Then I have come back here, Then I have a criminal life cycle, and that has a dozen queues in it, and it has everything. I mean, the warrant clerk, the motion and trial clerk, summons clerk. A lot of our clerks, they overlap in terms of their access because they're cross-trained and they can do lots of different things. So it's not uncommon for many of my clerks to have access to most, if not all, of these queues. And then I have an infraction life cycle. And then we move into the courtroom because I have a judge bench life cycle. And that's where, all the court calendar is created for the day and all the judges' cases are in that life cycle. So when they're on the bench, they just access their judge bench queue. But when they're not on the life cycle, if they're not in court, I have a life cycle called judge review. And that's where all the civil stuff goes into for them to review and sign, or if they have any warrants that they need to sign. It also has a prep for hearing queue. The weird thing about our solution is we're always a day behind in our solution, and that's because of our inability to fully integrate with the JIS DISCUS system that AOC has for us. And so we pull court cases in 9 days in advance. So we're always going out and grabbing the next 9 days worth of cases. And so in this judge review queue, we have actually a prep for hearing queue, so the judge can always see what his court cases will be for the next day. or actually for the next 9 days, quite frankly. And then there's a lot of other system queues in here that really the management team deal with, where they're looking at exception queues and stuff like that we're trying to manage. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. So here's a great question. Since so much of your documents, everything is just all electronic. How do you handle summons and subpoenas?
As a court, we issue summons and subpoenas. Our documents are electronically generated now. The judges don't generate summons and subpoenas. The clerks do. And it has the clerks, actually, I think it has my signature on there automatically, because my signatures are stored in OnBase. Our electronic signatures are stored in OnBase. And so they are not, I think the question probably is going towards, what is an original versus what is an original, right? I get this question all the time. People kind of get stuck in the idea that a summons, an original document is a piece of paper that has an ink signature on it. And I'm trying to get people to kind of change their mindset on that, because that's not true in an electronic world. So we generate these documents electronically, and we affix our signature to them. That is the original document. That is it. And if we needed to print that out and send that somewhere, which we do, we print them out and send it somewhere. That's exactly what we do. We print it out and send it somewhere. If someone needed a certified copy of that document, we have the ability within OnBase to affix our stamps that we had in the paper world. We just replicated them in the electronic environment, and we affix the certification stamp on it, and then send it off to the sender, to the person requesting it, whether it's via an email or through box.com or printing it out and they pick it up, whatever the case may be. So I guess to answer the question about the subpoenas and the summonses, we generate those things electronically, we print them out, and we send them off. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so.
Thanks again for joining us today for this episode of Paperless Productivity. This podcast is sponsored by ImageSoft, the paperless process people, which you can learn more about at ImageSoftInc.com. That's ImageSoftInc.com. Join us next time, where you'll learn how to harness the power of technology, supercharge efficiency, and accomplish your organization's goals.